Investigative journalist Ray Joseph has for years been looking into how lottery money is spent. You may remember in June, Ray told us on this program about the Special Investigating Unit freezing the assets, the plush home of the former board chair of the National Lotteries Commission, Alfred Nebutanda. Well, now the commissioner for the NLC has resigned with immediate effect, just a month shy of the end of her contract. Thabang Mampane had been at the helm for nearly a decade, but it was recently revealed that her house in Pekinwood Estate in Hartbeespoort Dam was potentially bought with lottery money. Now, that's money meant to go to deserving projects for the poor and the vulnerable. Ray Joseph from GroundUp joins us now. Ray, thank you very much for joining us. So, I mean, the stories just keep on coming. So, talk to us about Thabang Mampane, what you found, how you found it, and how damning it is.
So I'd received a tip-off sometime last year that I'd been working really hard to stand up. The tip-off was that her home had been bought with lottery money. It finally came together. So what happened is in 2016, there were quite violent protests in Limpopo over the incorporation of some municipalities into a bigger municipality. And something like a dozen schools were either damaged or destroyed. One particular school, Vufamadi, called Vufamadi, got something like 28.5 million rand to rebuild the school. The project was given to an NPO, a dormant NPO, which belonged to a boxing promoter. Within no time of all of the first tranche of that money arriving in the NPO was called Simba, arrived in their account. No time at all, 4 million rand was paid over into the account of a private company belonging to this, associated with the COO of the lottery. At that stage, his brother was actually running it. He then resigned, and his cousin, and then his cousin's wife took over. So it's very closely connected to him. Within less than a month, 3.6 million rand money, and it's undoubtedly the money that came from Simba, because there wouldn't have been enough in the account to pay it without the Simba contribution, was paid to a transferring attorney for a property in Pekinwood Estate, which was bought by a trust, of which Mrs. Mampane and her husband are trustees, and she and her husband and their 2 adult children are beneficiaries. A further approximately 260,000 rand was also paid to that lawyer to cover transfer and legal costs. The house is bond-free. The house is bond-free. I then published a story about that. Unbeknown to me at the time, but I discovered after I'd published it, that Mrs. Mampane, in fact, had been called in by the SIU for an interview in which she was asked to explain how the house was funded and to produce documentation. My story appeared, and on the day that appeared, Mrs. Mampane turned up at work in the morning. Someone pointed the story out to her. She left. She told people she was going on leave, and she never went back to work.
Wow.
And then on the 15th, 2 days ago, she resigned with immediate effect.
So, Ray, I'm going to jump... just to jump in, because we know that in October 2020, the President signed off on the SIU probing lottery money. You, of course, have been looking into lottery money for years before that, if I'm not mistaken. Have we got to the bottom of the rot? I mean, have we got to the bottom, or are you still digging? Is there more to come, Ray?
Well, look, I think what's more to come is more corruption and more corrupt deals. But what we do know, we to an extent got to the bottom of it. So what happened is Mrs. Mampane was working at the SABC. as acting chief operations officer, was then moved to the lottery, got a golden handshake. Alfred Neville Tando, who also got a house on the lottery, by the way, the chairman of the board, Philip Letwaba, also got a lot of his house paid for on the lottery. And there's a lawyer called William Huma, also got 2 houses on the lottery, actually, and a chicken farm. They appear to be at the very center of that. So they signed off on this policy. They were the brains behind it. The law changed in 2015, which brought in a thing called proactive funding. But we certainly now know how the lottery was captured.
Yeah. How
this proactive funding, which was used to loot hundreds of millions of rands. I believe it's beyond R1 billion. Oh. Mainly on big infrastructure projects, and the money for all the houses that I've just mentioned. I found half a dozen houses, at least, luxury houses built on the lottery.
I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking what you're telling us. I hope it is, as you say, nearing the end. Very briefly, are we seeing the law enforcement bodies? We've seen some assets frozen, but are we seeing charges being laid and people preparing to head to court? Is that happening as well?
So, no. So what is happening, bear in mind that the SIU is not a prosecutorial authority. Their mandate is to investigate and to claw back money stolen by corruption.
Yeah.
But what they do is the investigations on a prosecutorial level, and they hand that stuff to the NPA and to the Hawks. I'm sorry to say that both the NPA and the Hawks have been missing in action on this, and it's time for them now to step up.
Right.
And do their thing. The assets will be frozen, but
which is a good first start.
Is a separate issue.
Yeah, it's a good first start, but we need to see prosecutions. Ray Joseph, thank you so much for that update.